Like many other people my age, I grew up watching Disney princesses.
Up where they walk, up where they run, up where they stay all day in the sun. A whole new world. I know you, I walked with you once upon a dream.
Bittersweet and strange, finding you can change, learning you were wrong.
Why, it's like a dream. A wonderful dream come true.
Or maybe it's fairer to say I grew up watching the idea of Disney princesses, as advertised, packaged, and sold by the Disney company. My adamantly tomboyish self was disgusted. If I loved the original movies, and I did, I refused to admit it. To love them, to watch them, to learn from them, felt like it would turn me into the girls in the commercials.
Disney princesses have one thing in common. They're sparkling.
Oh, we're sparkling.
Purple is your color.
Yeah, glitter everywhere. Dresses, crowns, and shoes.
Kind of girl I just wasn't. Now I sometimes wonder if, had I been able to separate this
New Enchanted Melodies Belle Doll
from this,
But we're not coming home till he's dead. Good and dead. Kill the beast.
No, I won't let you do this.
when I was a kid, those films would have been able to teach me much more. But luckily I had a different teacher. I had Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. So today I'm going to return the favor, to explain how Nausicaa decouples princess-like ideals from passiveness or naivete, how she subverts most princess narratives by already understanding the outside world, how she and the two other princesses she encounters show us the reality of being a leader after you become one, and how Nausicaa fits in this post-Disney princess era of storytelling. This is why I really like Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind is a 1984 Japanese animated movie written and directed by the now famed Hayao Miyazaki and adapted from his 1982 manga of the same name. Set on a post-apocalyptic Earth where years of war and human industry has morphed the natural world into wasteland and toxic jungle, it follows Nausicaa, princess of one of the last remaining villages.
It's good to hope for a daughter who's strong like the princess, but not for one who likes to play in the toxic jungle.
But Mito, the jungle is where I found the Ohm shell.
All I do is worry when she's running around out there. I'd trade 1,000 Ohm shells for a good night's sleep.
Sorry, Mito. We'd rather have the Ohm shells, and I think the princess should explore all she wants.
I agree. Who else would rescue me when I'm in trouble?
One day, a warlike kingdom called Tolmekia invades her peaceful valley, seeking to forcibly unite humanity against the jungle and the giant Omu who guard it.
You now live at the edge of the jungle, on the verge of extinction. Follow us and join our enterprise. We shall put the toxic jungle to the torch and resurrect this land together.
Burn the toxic jungle?
With what?
Is that possible?
I have in my possession mankind's greatest tool, the awesome force which once allowed human beings to rule the earth. I guarantee that those who join me will live without fear of the insects or the jungle's poisons ever again.
Thus, Nausicaa is compelled to leave her home as a prisoner of war, thrust into a journey to save her people and restore humanity's connection with nature. Nausicaa has so many of the hallmarks that would later come to define a Studio Ghibli film that it's often cited as the first, even though the studio itself wasn't created until a year after its release. In particular, it might be Miyazaki's most overt environmentalist message, with Nausicaa as the literal messiah, delivering her green gospel. But it also has the others. The distinct hand-drawn art style, the nuanced competing philosophies, and the varied, courageous, developed female leads. In 1985, New World Pictures brought America the dubious gift of Nausicaa's first English dub, a bastardized, re-edited version that cut over 20 minutes of footage in an attempt to make sure the pace was never ever slow, and the line between good guys and bad guys was at least 10 feet across and bold. You know, for the kids. And if the utter mangling of the film's message wasn't enough, this was its promotional poster. If you want a more in-depth discussion of Warriors of the Wind, what it cut, and its legacy on Ghibli's dubbing policy, I suggest checking out Enzo the Otaku's video on the subject. But if you, like me, wish to pretend that it doesn't exist, suffice it to say that in 2005, Walt Disney Home Entertainment re-released an unedited English dub of the film. This was the dub that my father bought. This was the Nausicaa I grew up with. Nausicaa is not a violent movie, nor is its world, I would argue, significantly more violent than ours. But a world not significantly more violent than ours is still violent. The prologue opens on a village overrun by poisonous spores and a history of fire, giant destructive warriors, and collapsed civilization. Tomikia takes a princess of Pejite as their prisoner, who then dies of injury when the insect-beset warship crashes. When Tomikia invades the valley in earnest, they do so with armed soldiers, tanks, and more warships. They proceed to kill Nausicaa's father and take Nausicaa as leverage, forcing the people of the valley to obey them under threat of massacre. And that's just half an hour into the runtime. Throughout the course of her journey, Nausicaa is chased, captured, shot at, actually shot, burned by acid, caught in another warship on fire, held at gunpoint, and at the mercy of hundreds of enraged stampeding Ohm. Not exactly in that order. But Nausicaa still chooses not to kill. Nausicaa chooses compassion and empathy. Nausicaa chooses pacifism. Those values sound familiar? They should. They're traditionally feminine, princess ideals. And maybe we're uncomfortable with that. With the very real need for active, strong female characters, some may see a refusal to fight, especially in a world of violence, as weak. There are two arguments for this. The first is that pacifism in a world marred by violence is a sign of naivete, that holding on to ideals like compassion or empathy is not heroic, but delusional.
The people that I deal with, they don't care about your rules. All they care about is a result. My job is to stop them from accomplishing their objectives. I simply adapted.
Refusing to accept violence as necessary becomes synonymous with refusing to see the world as it is, logically. Refusing to engage with violence becomes refusing to engage with the world.
The truth, Senator, is I stopped that attack from happening. By torturing Mr. Haddad. By doing what I deem necessary to protect innocent lives.
Which leads into the second argument, that pacifism is the same as passiveness. That refusing violence is synonymous with refusing to make choices. And because characters are predicated on choice, because good plot advances due to the choices characters make, the thought of a character who wallows in indecision is frustrating.
Shinji, you must pilot the robot.
No, I am afraid.
Shinji, you
But Nausicaa refutes both arguments. She's not naive to the violence going on around her. In fact, she's horrified at the extent to which she herself is capable of it. When she bursts into her father's bedroom just a second too late to stop the Tomikin soldiers from killing him, she flies into a rage and slaughters 5 men. Ian DeWeese Boyd, in his paper Shoujo's Savior, Princess Nausicaa, Ecological Pacifism, and the Green Gospel, says of this, Miyazaki has her struggle with her own violence, showing it to be real, so that her non-violence, when it emerges, is equally real. Her rejection of violence through the remainder of the film is more significant because we know it isn't merely imaginary violence, she renounces. And when Princess Kushana, leader of the Tomikin army, directly accuses Nausicaa of being too naive.
You're too naive. You shouldn't think we're best friends now just because you saved me.
We get another rejection of this argument.
What are you so afraid of? You act like a scared little fox squirrel.
What did you call me?
Don't be afraid. There's nothing to fear. I just want you to go back to your own country.
It is fear and ignorance, not logic, that makes us see violence as the only option. And Nausicaa is anything but passive.
Get upwind of it!
Right!
It's in trouble. They're trying to make an emergency landing. Help me launch, Gaul. Let's try the gunship.
What?
Don't shoot! Listen to me, please!
Just do as I say! Hurry!
No, she is constantly in action, reacting to different conflicts and making choices to resolve or escape them. Most of the violence she encounters is by her own choice, almost always in an attempt to save someone or something else from getting hurt. And though she refuses to fight, outrunning, outsmarting, or de-escalating the conflict still takes a lot of effort. As Louise Boyd puts it, her pacifism consists not in a simple, passive rejection of violence, but in an active striving to bring about substantiated peace between those who are at enmity. So here we see Nausicaa as the ultimate example of pacifism in action. A princess who proves that belief in peace, compassion, and empathy in a violent world is not weakness or naivete, but courage.
Come on! Hurry!
And who shows us that acting non-violently still means acting, diligently working toward a more peaceful world. Speaking of the world, in Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces, the world beyond established tradition is described like this. Beyond them is darkness, the unknown, and danger. Just as beyond the parental watch is danger to the infant, and beyond the protection of his society, danger to the member of the tribe. The usual person is more than content, he is even proud, to remain within the indicated bounds, and popular belief gives him every reason to fear so much as the first step into the unexplored. So in the traditional hero's journey, the young, untried hero or heroine enters a fantastical world they have never known. They must be taught how to deal with its dangers, protected and rescued from their early mistakes, and rewarded when they have finally mastered the workings of the world, at which point the story ends. But Nausicaa has mastered this world already. She traverses the wilds of the jungle with ease, comfortable with the world outside of her village from the very first scene. She tests the hardness of the elm shell and blows off its eye with a certainty born of practice. She knows how to calm insects and understands more than anyone the importance of respecting the elm. She studies the poisonous plants and is unafraid of them. She rides her glider like the wind itself. She knows this unknown. This offers Nausicaa a lot of the agency that Disney princesses tend to lack. She can and will venture beyond the boundaries of safety. And because she knows how that outside world works already, she is able to work within it, engage with it, and change it much more deliberately and successfully. Compare with the narratives of most Disney princesses, who all desire the outside world, but lack any real knowledge of it. When they finally venture into it, they are hopelessly unprepared and overwhelmed. They may engage with the world and even change it, but their engagement is often tentative or considered wrong in some way, and the change they create is often an accidental byproduct of the power of their love. There isn't anything wrong with the traditional princess's narrative or the hero's journey, of course. Nothing wrong with entering a fantastical unknown and understandably being in way over your head. But Nausicaa offers us a glimpse of a princess after the end of this story, who isn't just becoming knowledgeable, but is knowledgeable, who doesn't just seek the outside world, but has mastered it, whose freedom isn't just earned, but used, and whose just and happy rule we don't just infer, but see. Well, what do we see then?
It's strange that you're a princess too. You're not anything at all like our princess.
Being a princess means something.
It's the princess! The princess!
There's the princess!
It's something we might forget when we look at Disney. Because so many of the classic Disney princess stories are about becoming a princess rather than being one, the hard realities of leadership are glossed over with happily ever after. or at least only addressed in the mostly forgotten sequels.
Who sits next to the Count?
The Duke?
The Marquis. Gold or silver?
For what?
Baron or Viscount?
Who?
Pico or Dargini?
Even when the characters are princesses initially, their responsibilities and restrictions are not the logical consequences of their station that they must deal with, but rather outdated traditions they chafe against.
The law says you must be married to a prince by your next birthday.
The law is wrong.
You've only got 3 more days.
Father, I hate being forced into this.
Or almost utterly disposable bureaucracy. Thus the idea of being a princess is left to the glittery, chirpy-voiced mercy of the toy lines. Something completely superficial, a nebulous reward, a title more ascribed to the confined girls at the beginning of the story than whoever they were at the end. But in Nausicaa, being a princess means something. We see this threefold, with Nausicaa herself, with the commander of the Tolmekian army, Princess Kushana, and with the deceased princess of Pejite, Listel. Nausicaa and Kushana are both the sole rulers of their respective kingdoms. They have male advisors, but the actual leadership clearly falls to them. Nausicaa's people love her, listen to her, are deeply loyal to her, and believe in her above all else. All of their hope hangs on her.
Don't panic, just keep moving forward. There's still time.
Red Mito, we're going to die anyway. We should die in the valley.
No, as long as the princess hasn't given up, we can't either.
Kushana's people admire and fear her in equal measure. They respect her power and look to her for protection. And though Listel dies before we really get to know anything about her, we see that her people still remember and love her, sparing Nausicaa thrice over because of it.
Nausicaa, we're going to get you out of here, so you can warn the people of the valley. There may still be enough time if you take your glider. It's ready and waiting for you. Asbel told me everything that has happened.
I'm going to be taking your place, Princess. Put this on.
But who are you?
I'm Asbel and Lastel's mother.
She's in range. Shoot her! I can't! It's Listel.
So being a princess in Nausicaa's world means bearing the direct responsibility of not only people's lives, but also their collective hope and belief. It's not something to take lightly. Every princess in the film must make choices according to what she thinks is best for her people, trying to honor the faith put in her, with very little regard for self. When the Tolmekians invade, Nausicaa sacrifices herself as a prisoner of war, so no more of her people are killed in the fighting. She begs the Pejites not to incite the stampede, because the valley would be caught in the crossfire. And when that fails, she literally stands between the wall of enraged creatures and her valley.
What are you planning to do to my valley?
Kushana captures a princess, invades the valley, and resurrects a giant warrior in a misguided attempt to protect both her people and humanity from the encroaching toxic jungle.
The insects must be stopped. You must revive the warrior and use it to destroy them and their jungle.
Listel, who I'm sure would have been much like Nausicaa had she survived, uses her last breath to beg that the giant warrior be burned for good, because she knows it's a threat to her people.
You must burn the cargo.
The cargo?
I beg of you, burn everything.
Yes, Listel, I understand. Everything is burning, don't you worry.
Thank God.
So ultimately, we see in Nausicaa that being a princess actually means a long road of hard choices, made for the benefit of others and at great personal cost. And it teaches us that when you can and do choose that selflessly, you become an inspiration, a symbol of something great, that will be remembered, that means something. I tried to keep the Disney comparisons to a minimum. Really, I tried. But it's really hard to discuss something like princesses when your and your society's entire base conception of princess was formed in large part by Disney. Maybe I should have rehauled this entire video into Nausicaa versus the Disney Princess and just bashed Disney the whole time. Certainly that would have earned me more views. But it wouldn't have made my point, I think. Because my point isn't that I hate Disney. In fact, I'm sure I'll talk about the many Disney films I really like sometime in this series. It's just that in this past decade, Disney has been trying somewhat unsubtly to redefine their concept of princess.
Okay, first, I'm not a princess. I'm the daughter of the chief.
Same difference.
No.
If you wear a dress and you have an animal sidekick, you're a princess.
Fine. You can't marry a man you just met.
What kind of a princess are you?
What kind?
Do you have magic hair?
No.
Magic hands?
No.
Do animals talk to you?
No.
Were you poisoned?
No.
Cursed?
No.
Kidnapped or enslaved?
No. Are you guys okay? Should I call the police?
Then I have to assume you made a deal with an underwater sea witch where she took your voice in exchange for a pair of human legs?
No. Good Lord, who would do that?
Have you ever had true love's kiss?
Ew, barf.
Do you have daddy issues?
I don't even have a mom.
Neither do we. And now for the million-dollar question. Do people assume all your problems got solved because a big, strong man showed up?
Yes. What is up with that?
She is a princess.
And that's fine. That's good. They should do that. And certainly Disney, with more than half a century of princess canon behind them, has a lot more baggage to address and subvert than Miyazaki did with his first original film. But one of these days, we're going to have to get past the criticism and mocking of what princesses were then.
You can't marry a man you just met. You can if it's true love. Anna, what do you know about true love?
And start asking, what are princesses now? Will new princesses not be allowed to be gentle, compassionate, and peaceful, for fear of seeming too much like an old princess? Will they still be stuck in becoming narratives where their power and agency is limited by their lack of knowledge? Will their responsibilities, burdens, and importance as leaders remain unaddressed, their people abstract and non-existent? If Disney is seeking to redefine the Disney princess, they're going to have to answer these questions and more. They can't just be seeking. They're going to have to give us, a redefinition. And hey, Nausicaa is an excellent teacher.
These nuts taste awful. What are they?
They're called Chico nuts. They're supposed to be good for you.
Why does everything that's good for you taste so bad?